All right, well, welcome everyone. This is Teddy Pins, and we're so excited you're here today. We are joined by the amazing Mr. Jay Cash. This man's father, I believe, is got the nickname the Selling Machine.
That's right.
And I imagine Jay is no different. I could give you his bio and all the great things, but I'm sure he's going to show that to us in his little presentation here. But Jay, we're so grateful to have you here today, and we're excited to learn more about auctions and how we're practically feel like we're sort of doing those in a weird way right now as real estate agents, and why things we should be cautious to, and when we should choose to auction and when we shouldn't. And I'm just going to turn it over to you, and I'm so grateful for your time today. Thank you so much. Take it away, Jay.
Hey, welcome everyone. I am Jay Cash, auctioneer and a real estate broker, and I live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And our company was created by my dad some 40 plus years ago, and we've got a footprint in 14 states. We primarily conduct our real estate auctions in Tennessee, Kentucky, Southern Illinois, Southeast Missouri, and then I pick up a little bit of Georgia and Alabama, but the bread and butter, all of it is right here in Middle Tennessee. And so this course that we're going to go over was approved for CE credit. It's been approved through TREC. I don't think we're going to qualify to get CE credit today, but what you're going to get is every question you've ever had about auctions, how they work, how to leverage them as a buyer's agent, as a seller's agent, and how you can make money with an auction, and just things you need to know that are going to put you in the driver's seat anytime a client or someone asks about an auction. There are some parts of the country where auctions are not very prevalent, but my gosh, here in Middle Tennessee, any given corner, you name it, is going to have multiple auction signs for real estate sales. And a lot of times I have found over the last 5 years, which is why I wrote this class, a lot of brokers don't understand how an auction works. And naturally, when you don't understand something, you kind of shy away from it, and you don't want to encourage your clients to go that direction. But there's a lot of benefits. And so we're going to go over all that. Like I said just a moment or two ago, anybody can ask a question at any time. I'm going to get my chat open, but you guys feel free to harp in anytime you want to. I'll start the slideshow here, but I've been an auctioneer and real estate broker my entire life. I grew up in the auction business, and I came to Middle Tennessee because of MTSU. I stayed here, and I'm a second generation auctioneer and real estate broker, and this is all I know how to do. And at the end of the day, we're really proud to be auctioneers. We are members of the Williamson County Association of Realtors. I'm a past board member of the Middle Tennessee Association of Realtors. I'm also a current board member for the National Auctioneers Association. So the NAA is what that's called, is very similar to the NAR, the National Association of Realtors. It's just the equivalent of what auctioneers joined, the NAA. So I sit on the National Board of Directors there. Yes, you do go to auction school. You can. Now, it's not required in every state, but it's usually a good thing to go to auction school and to learn how to do it. And we learn how to talk fast there. We learn a lot about the laws and things like that. But I did that long time ago. And again, we are just so proud to be auctioneers and real estate brokers. So we're going to talk about two different ways of making money at an auction. All right. So there's the better way of representing your seller at an auction. That's how you get paid the most money. The other way is still all right. It's representing a buyer at an auction. So I'm going to tell you when, if you're going to make notes or commit anything to memory, I'm going to tell you when to do that. But the main thing to know is that when you have a client that's possibly interested in having an auction, at this point, you don't even know when that may or be a necessary consideration. But just know you can get paid your full commission when you refer a client to an auction. If you have a buyer, you can sometimes get paid, but definitely if you have a seller, most auction companies are going to be willing to partner with you. Certainly my firm, James R. Cash Auctions, is always going to be realtor friendly. And there are a lot of auction companies that are also realtor friendly. Some that may not be their method of how they operate, and they may not be, but just overall, most are. But you can earn a commission, and it is all negotiable. It can be very, very fair, 50-50. It could be just a referral where you get 20 or 25%. I'm going to tell you that if you work with us, it's going to be split right down the middle. Whatever the commission is, we're splitting that down the middle between you as the referring agent and then us as the auctioneer and broker. When you are representing a seller and it's referred to an auction, or if you refer it to us or whatever auction company, that becomes a partnership and a team. It's you and the auctioneer working together to get the most money. So how do you find an auctioneer that you like? Well, you just got to do it just the same way you find your mortgage lenders that you like, your closing attorneys that you like. We all know there are some closing attorneys and closing companies, they couldn't close the front door, much less close a transaction. And we stay away from those, just like some of our lenders. They know how to screw a deal up. You don't want to partner with those guys. You want to pick out the ones that know how to pack the mail and get the job done. And auctioneers are no different. You want to find somebody that you know, like, and trust, and that you have confidence in, that's going to have the ability to get the transaction closed, represent you in a way that you want to be represented in a professional manner. And the one thing you probably should do, at least the first outing and probably every time, is get a compensation agreement signed that says this is the agreement we have between you and I. You know, we do that all the time in our private transactions, but when you refer that property out, getting that compensation agreement, something in writing, whether it's an email or just a straight up TAR form, I would suggest getting that signed. The referral is always negotiable. It can be split any way you want to do it, but just know you can get paid if you have a seller and if you have a buyer. Okay. So that was selling at an auction. Here's buying at an auction. So right now, all of us here on the Zoom, we are all members of RealTrax, the Middle Tennessee MLS, and it is a massive MLS, one of the largest in the country, and it is auction friendly. We have worked with them. I myself directly have spent hours with RealTrax trying to figure out how do we get auctions in there where it's not misleading or confusing. And you can always check. You can always check to exclude auctions. I wouldn't do that. There's no sense in doing that, because if it's in the MLS, you are going to be paid something for bringing your buyer to the auction. Now, it may not be that full commissioned rate that you would like, but obviously that's something you sign with your buyer and the buyer's representation agreement, where the buyer's agreeing to pay you so much money. The way the MLS works, it's a co-op. So we all know how this works. It's, you know, obviously it says on there 3, 2, 5, whatever the percentage is, that's what you can be paid. At an auction, we call that broker participation. Okay. That is where you bring your client to the auction and you can be paid a percentage. It may not be that full amount that you wanted, but it's at least a portion of that. If it's in the MLS, you are going to be compensated, okay? And so that term is called broker participation. Now, if it's not in the MLS, there may not be broker participation, but a requirement to be in RealTrax is it must offer some sort of broker participation. And if you don't see it in there, it doesn't hurt to call and ask the auction company, are you offering broker participation? And that is a percentage or a flat fee for you to bring your buyer. If they're the winning bidder, you get paid. Now, with broker participation, there could be some requirements in the media files when you download the forms. What I typically will see is that you've got to fill out the broker representation form prior to the auction. Okay. So you fill that out, you put your client's name on it. They may require an opening bid. They may require you to show the property prior to the auction. They may have something that you need to sign that just says, I am working with this client. It could just be your buyer's representation agreement that you need to submit and show. Whatever it is, it differs from every auction company. Some companies have more hoops for you to jump through. It needs to be simple, but some companies make it more difficult. The others just show up. So if you bring a buyer to one of our auctions, we require that you fill out the broker participation form. You're generally helpful. You show the property prior to the auction, and you are paid a percentage based on whatever opening bid you're able to procure for us. It's a little bit more difficult to get paid that way, because you are now having to work and hustle and get your buyer to submit a stronger opening bid, because that's how you're compensated. If you and I are working for the seller, you're going to love that. But if you're representing the buyer, it makes it not as much fun, because you've got to get your buyer to give a stronger opening bid, but you're going to love that. The main reason that form's got to be turned in, and this is true, I can't make this story up, but she is a past Realtor of the Year award winner. And I think she deserves even a bigger award for figuring this out. But she came to an auction. She stood at the mailbox And as buyers were coming to the auction that morning, she was asking them if they're represented. Most of them, of course, said no. And she said, well, goodness gracious. Here's a tax record that I printed off the MLS. Here's an MLS comp sheet. And if you want to, I'll go up here and represent you. And so she would just pick up buyers at the front door, at the mailbox, essentially, and then walk them up to the auction company and register them right there on the spot. So that's not really the intent of broker participation. She was not procuring those buyers. She was just standing at the mailbox, greeting people and telling them she was a licensed agent and could represent them. But genius on her part. But the intent is you bring one of your clients, you're the procuring cause, you find the property and you bring them to the auction and you get paid if they buy the property. And that is called broker participation. That's something you should always ask for. If it's in the MLS, it's always going to have some amount of money that you'll be compensated if your client's the winning bidder. The next term that you should commit to memory and think about and know is called a buyer's premium. So a buyer's premium, it is a fee paid by the buyer, usually in the form of a percentage added to the final bid. So whatever the final bid is, there is a buyer's premium that'll be added to the final bid. It's always going to be disclosed. It should always be disclosed, but it's the first thing you should look for sometimes if you have someone looking at buying a property at an auction. The buyer's premium is just a different way of charging a commission. It's a fee added to the final bid. Typically, you're going to see 10%. It could be a flat fee of $5,000 is added to the final bid to determine the total sales price. The buyer's premium allows the auction company to create an additional stream of income to offset the cost of the auction. That could be how they're getting completely paid for the auction. It's just another way of charging versus the traditional way where you charge a percentage of the sales price to the seller. The buyer's premium is added to the final bid, and you always need to be aware of that. So for example, if you have a 10% buyer's premium and the property sells for $100,000, 10% is added to 100,000. That equals $110,000. And that is the total purchase price of the property. So anytime you have a client looking at an auction, you should check and make sure that there's a buyer's premium. And remember that, because that's the fee added to the final bid. There are pros and cons to having a buyer's premium, and it's been debated at length for decades, but it is just becoming more and more common in Middle Tennessee for there to be a buyer's premium added to the final bid versus a seller paid commission. It's just the way it is. And it differs from different parts of the country, wherever you go. Sometimes the buyer's premium isn't as common, but make sure you write that down. So we've got broker participation and buyer's premium, both are BP words, but make note of that. The next one, absolute auction. So a lot of times people will ask this and they don't even know what it really means. But an absolute auction in Tennessee, throughout the United States, there are two types of auctions. There are auctions with reserve, and then there are auctions without reserve. All auctions are conducted with a reserve unless stated otherwise. Okay, I'm going to say it again. All auctions, if you see an auction sign on the side of the road that says auction, you need to be thinking it probably has a reserve unless it's stated otherwise. That means it says auction without reserve, or if you see the word absolute auction. An absolute auction is an auction without reserve. Anybody can bid on the property. The only person that can't bid on it is the current seller or ownership. Okay, because a sale is guaranteed, buyer excitement is heightened. And usually there's more interest at an absolute auction, but it's not always the case. Not every auction is absolute, but most of them are. And when it's in the MLS, it should be denoted if it's a reserve auction or if it's an absolute auction. Most of our sales are absolute. A lot of the sales in the MLS are, but some are not. So that's just a word you need to know. At absolute just means there's no reserve. There's no minimum bid. Whatever the final bid is, it will be accepted by the seller. Okay, pretty simple. Reserve auctions. This is the other. Most auctions are conducted, all auctions are with a reserve. I don't know a percentage of what's absolute or not absolute, but that's just where the seller has the right to accept or reject the final bid. A lot of sales may have a reserve, but there is not a set reserve price. That at the end of the day, the seller doesn't know what they want. They just want to have a good auction and they want to feel great about the process. and they're going to accept or reject the final bid just based off if it was a good sell or not. So sometimes agents will call and ask, is it absolute or is it reserve? And I might say, well, it is with reserve. The seller has the right to accept or reject the final bid. The next question is, well, what's the minimum it takes to buy it? And most of the time, in my case, we don't have a hard set number. We just have a range or a general idea of what we're hoping to get for the property. Many times a seller will change their mind once they have an auction. They may say, I'm not taking a penny less than 600,000. And we get there the day of the sale, there's dozens and dozens of people show up, and we get 595,000 and they take it and they're happy as they can be. So just because it says a reserve, there may not be a set hard number that we've got to work with. The main disadvantage of a reserve auction is that buyers a lot of times don't take the sale as seriously, and we've got to overcome that, and we've got to convince people that we are here to sell this property. We're just not going to sell it irregardless of the final bid price. So moving along here, buyer benefits. So why would somebody want to buy at an auction? Well, we have all submitted offers and been in multiple offer scenarios. And your client's asking you, well, what do we do to win this? And you're there guessing, going, well, let's take off the home inspection. Let's waive our financing contingencies. Let's put in an escalation clause, and maybe we can win this offer in a multiple offer scenario. At an auction, it's very simple and transparent. All buyers are on a level playing field. Everybody abides by the same terms and conditions. All you got to do is be the highest bidder, and you're going to be the new owner of the property. So you don't have to wonder what all the other offers are being presented. You know that everybody that's bidding has to do the same thing that you do, which is typically 10% down or $10,000 down, and the balance is due in 45 days. Because it's at an auction and you know what the bid is, you can see what the next bid is. Smart investments can be made. You don't have to worry if you're overpaying $25, $50, or $100,000. You just have to be a little bit more than the previous bid. At an auction, the buyer, they determine the sales price. They're in control. They determine who sets the price, and as the buyer and the buyer's agent, you help them do that. When you purchase most properties at auction through the MLS, you're going to get a warranty deed. There's no liens, there's no encumbrances on the title. You're guaranteed clear title. From auction company to auction company, there may be a few nuances, but most of us are not providing title insurance. That if you want title insurance, you would pay for that yourself. You're buying it from boundary to boundary, wherever it may be. It may not be selling with a new survey. It may be with a new survey, but the terms and conditions are always disclosed up front, where you know exactly what's expected of you as the buyer of the real estate. So seller benefits. This is where it really gets fun. So at the end of the day, sellers just want to have complete confidence. They want to have certainty. They want to have absolute certainty that they're getting the most money for their property. Anytime any of us sit down, whether we're doing a private listing in downtown Franklin or in backwoods Waverly, Tennessee, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, all sellers want to have confidence and certainty that they're getting the most money they possibly can. We have all been there. We've had offers submitted. We get multiple offers submitted. We'll go down this road, and you call them, you're excited. Oh my gosh, we've gotten 6 offers, and they're all a little bit different. Some of them need financing. Some of them are no contingencies. Some of them are over list price. And the one question the sellers always ask is, well, which one of these offers is the best offer? And that's where we all have to just, pick what we think, steer them in the direction of which offer may be the best offer. We get married to that offer, and you hope that it's a great, short period of time, and there's no contingencies and there's no inspections, and it just closes soon. But we all know that nothing is that easy. And that's how a private sale works. At an auction, the seller sets all the terms and conditions, and they can have complete confidence and certainty because they see the market come. They all come together at the same time, whether it's in an online auction or if we're in the front yard at the property. All the bidding takes place at the same time, and they can see multiple offers being made at the same time. dozens of offers, 5 offers, just depends on the property, how many offers, but they can then have complete confidence they're getting the most money. When you have a properly advertised and conducted auction and you have a professional auction company working for you and your seller, you're going to get competition created amongst the buyers. The energy gets flowing, and that's when buyers start competing and sometimes pay well over what they intended to pay. And auctions can often exceed a negotiated sale. Like I've said earlier, the seller sets the terms and conditions. We're going to help you, guide you what's typical. In this world, we're seeing most terms and conditions are something like this: 10% down with the balance due in 45 days, or it's a flat fee of $50,000 down today, the balance is due in 45 days. There are no contingencies. It's not subject upon financing or an appraisal. And that's pretty much what you're going to find in all auctions throughout Middle Tennessee. There are a lot of other ideas and reasons you might consider an auction. It's just the aggressive marketing and advertising campaign. The seller sets the date and the time that they want the property to close, or when they want the auction to take place, and they're in full control of the entire process. We're not at the mercy of buyers submitting offers with whatever terms and conditions they want. So another question that gets asked: what types of properties work best at an auction? So anything can be sold at auction, anything at all. This year we have sold hotels, we've sold commercial vacant properties in downtown Nashville, we've sold luxury homes, we've sold properties that look more like dog houses. Anything can be sold at auction: residential, commercial, farmland, unique properties that are over improved and impossible to appraise or figure out how they're going to comp. We all have been out in the extremities of Middle Tennessee wondering who in the world would buy this house, and you get on the MLS and there's nothing like it. That is a great auction scenario. Just like if you've got a property that you know you're going to get multiple offers in, the most savvy thing you can do as a broker representing your seller is to recommend an auction and let the buyers fight over that property at an auction. It's a beautiful thing that happens. The savviest sellers, the savviest brokers in Middle Tennessee know how to leverage an auction to their benefit. And hopefully after this class, you're going to know when maybe you should consider having an auction. But anytime you think you're going to get multiple offers, think about having an auction. It will bring lights out what the property could bring. If you've got a home that's in need of repair or in need of maintenance and the sellers don't want to do any of that, that's a great property. What we're seeing at our auctions are we're having people that are trying to buy houses to live in as their own homes, end users. We're seeing investors show up wanting to add to their portfolios. We see flippers that are desperate. They're watching all the YouTube gurus, you know, the Grant Cardones and the different folks just telling them, you've got to buy a property, you got to buy, you can flip them and make money. There's two types of flippers. There's the ones that have no clue what they're doing, and then they're the ones that actually know exactly what they're doing. But the ones that don't know what they're doing are the ones I like, because they come and they usually buy and bid way too much on the property. And hey, we're not there to set the price. We're there to let them give all they want to give for the house. But anything can be sold. Anything, you name it, it can be sold. It all depends on the seller's situation. So when you call and you're asking the auctioneer, hey, I've got this wonderful house. It's in Franklin. It's really big. They've spent a lot of money on it. It'll sell. Anything will sell at auction. It always depends on the seller's situation. And that's where a professional auctioneer is going to guide you. You want to partner with an auctioneer that isn't desperate to get their name and sign in a yard. You want someone that's going to represent you and your seller and tell them that an auction is right for them or not right for them. You're going to find there's a lot of aggressive people out there that are just desperate to get a listing. And we've all competed against those brokers where they just try to buy the listing, which means they're just shooting an absurd list price that we all know is never going to sell, but they're trying to, you know, buy the listing by telling the seller that they can sell the property for more than anyone else can. And we all know that that is just, you know, impossible for the house to bring $1 million when it's only a $700,000 house. So auctioneers, there's some of those out there that will do whatever it takes to get their name in the yard conducting the auction. But you should always consider an auction if you have a seller that needs an immediate sale. Okay, so they're like, I'm moving to Phoenix. I have got to be there by the end of September, and we need this house gone. We need to unload this house. We don't want it sitting vacant. If you've got a partnership dissolvement or divorce, 100%, the best thing you can do is have an auction, and either party can buy each other out, and the auction makes things very simple. Sellers moving out of state or retiring, if it's part of an estate where somebody has died, grandmother and grandfather have died, a lot of the calls that we get start with it's an estate settlement, and they want us to come in and sell the pots and pans and the furniture that nobody wants. That's how a lot of the phone calls start, but we end up explaining how the auction process works, and we end up selling the house. So if they have personal property and a lot of assets they need to move inside the house as well as the real estate, an auction can be your best friend. But like I said, to start this slide, a professional auctioneer is going to tell you if the situation dictates having an auction or not. The last thing you should do is just have an auction to give it a shot or see what happens. You need someone that has complete certainty and confidence in what they're doing. And we know if we're going to be able to get from A to B for your client. Otherwise, don't have the auction. Realtor benefits. Okay, hit on this earlier, going to hit on it again. You will get paid your full listing commission if you're working with us or a reputable company or whatever negotiated rate you agreed to before the listing. You're going to be included on marketing expenses if you choose to be. If you don't want to be, that's fine, but you're going to get the benefit of a lot of advertising dollars as the co-list on this property. Become a true full service professional. I can't tell you the amount of brokers, monster brokers that are oblivious to how auctions work. For whatever reason, a listing expires or they get let go of a listing, and then we follow it up with a very successful auction. Be the procuring cause in that scenario and you'll get paid. But there have been a lot of brokers that just aren't mindful. They don't know how an auction works, and they're not listening to their sellers' needs to think, hey, an auction could be a great candidate. So don't lose out on a listing. And this exposes you to a large group of bidders and buyers. I'll show you a video of one we just did a few weeks ago in Franklin. That was just a well-attended auction. It was great. So finding the right auctioneer. You guys, there's a lot of auctioneers out there, just like closing attorneys and mortgage lenders and title companies, but just find somebody that's professional, licensed, and experienced. To be an auctioneer, you do have to have a license almost identical to how we become real estate agents. Somebody that's knowledgeable, that has a full staff, they have the equipment, they know how to make buyers and sellers comfortable, and they've got the ability to close, and somebody that's going to be so transparent with you. If you ever have to ask questions, or if you're not confident in how the process is working, or you don't feel like you're getting the whole, you feel like you're not getting everything answered, or you still have questions throughout the process, find somebody else to work with, because life is too short. You guys work way too hard to procure a seller to hand them over to somebody that you don't completely trust. So make sure you trust them. Go to the auction, visit them, interview them, and see who other folks are using, and find somebody that's very reputable. The one thing I would say to look forward to is look for that NAA logo. All right, that's the one thing you should look forward to. I know it sounds kind of fluffy, but just like when you're looking for a broker or another agent, they need to be a realtor. They need to be in the MLS. They need to believe and be held to the same caliber, the same level of ethics that we all abide by as realtors. The same thing goes with an NAA auctioneer. That's what you want to look for. Make sure they're a part of the NAA as well. So referring real estate, very simple. Just tell the client early on, I've listened to everything that you've told me, and I've seen the property. It's a hot property. It's going to sell quickly. I think we ought to consider an auction. And at an auction, you could explain some of the benefits that, you can find out who's willing to pay the most for it. You set the terms and conditions and all that, but just tell them it might be an option, and that you happen to know one of the top auctioneers in the state, and that we would like to set up a meeting. That's when I would come in, or whoever you're partnering with comes in, and they'll go down. This is what it looks like from start to finish. This is what an auction would look like. So sit in on that meeting, be there. You're a part of that process from start to finish. A lot of times we don't talk numbers. They may want to know, what's my house going to bring? And we're going to give you a range of what it should do. But at the end of the day, the sky's the limit. And a lot of times when I book an auction, we're not even going to discuss the sales price, because we know that if it's properly advertised and conducted, it's going to bring the most money. These are the last slide here. I've tried to get through this so we're not sitting on here forever, which we're going through great for more questions. But here are frequently asked questions that if we don't hit on your question, or if I miss something, I'll go back and explain something again. I've got a video I'll show you as well if you've never been to an auction. But frequently asked questions are, can my buyer get a loan on a property that's selling at auction? The answer is absolutely, no problem at all. Just know it's not contingent upon your client getting that loan, that it's not contingent upon an appraisal. And you need to be aware that whatever that final bid is, irregardless of what the appraisal says at the end, you're going to be responsible for that total purchase price. Can properties be purchased before an auction? I suppose they could. I don't know why you would want to do that, because as a buyer, the fairest way to buy and sell is at the auction. There are some auction companies that are really promoting to buy the property before the auction. That is a great way for your buyer to overpay. And if you have an auction company that is trying to encourage pre-auction offers and sell it beforehand, they don't have confidence in the auction and the process. And that probably means they're not getting the response from the market they thought they would be getting. And they're just hoping to get somebody who will overpay prior to the auction. So I'll always encourage the seller and the buyer to wait, come to the auction, because I know if it goes to auction, we're going to get the most money for it. But at the end of the day, no matter where I am, if a pre-auction offer is submitted, we'll disclose it. We will talk it over with the seller. If it makes sense, certainly there's nothing wrong about it. All offers must be presented if they're in writing. Typically, if you're trying to purchase a property prior to the auction, it's under the exact same terms as if you did buy it at the auction. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't encourage your buyers to do that, because they could find out that they overpaid or not overpaid. I think the fairest way to do it is come to the auction. One question we get is, when's the best time to sell? All right, same answer you guys give. When's the best time to list my home? I always say, when you're ready to sell the property, that's the best time. I think we've all seen maybe a little bit of a plateau here in Middle Tennessee with some of the absurdity that was taking place earlier in the year. We still have properties selling over list price and multiple offers, but maybe not quite as fierce as it was earlier in the year, February, March, April. But we can't predict the future. Now's the best time if you're ready to sell. Another question is, do you sell personal property? And we do sell a lot of personal property that is non-real estate. We sell everything but the house. It always depends on the situation, if it makes sense for you to hire us to sell the pots and pans. Another thing that you may get or hear if you present the idea of an auction to your client is they assume that auctions are a last resort, that only desperate and dead people are having auctions. That's not the case at all. The finest assets in the world are sold at auctions, from automobiles, racehorses, fine art, jewelry. Real estate is no exception. When sellers want to find out just how valuable or what their property is worth, their collector cars, their fine race, whatever they've got, they typically will send it to auction. And that is where you can truly figure out what the house is worth and who is willing to pay the absolute most money for it. So auctions are not a last resort at all. Are auctions risky? No, not at all. If you're having an absolute auction, yes, there are, the thought of, oh, I have to sell it regardless of price. There's nothing I could do if it brings $10. Well, that's not going to happen. That would be absurd. But sellers have safety nets in place if they are having an absolute auction, or if they're having a reserve auction. There really isn't a risk at all, but all of that will be explained when we meet with your client. All of these questions should be covered, and we want to make you feel just as confident as the seller if you're deciding to move forward with an auction. Likewise, if you have a buyer, they need to have the same level of confidence in what they're getting ready to do, just like you do if you're representing them. I think that will pretty much cover the slideshow portion of it. So if you have any questions, right now is the time to
we had some questions that came in, Jay, and in the chat, and I'd love to share those with you if you could.
Yeah, let me get out of here. Let's go.
Yeah. So Crystal asked, how do we know a seller is providing free and clear title if there's not a title search, and what assurance can buyers have?
All right. So typically there's going to be a title search done for the benefit of the seller prior to the auction. Okay. They'll have the title of commitment letter. All of that will be out there. You're guaranteed in the purchase agreement with nearly any auction company that I know of in Middle Tennessee. So and I'll preface this with getting elected to the board of directors, I get to network with hundreds and hundreds of auctioneers across the state and the country. And we all are in this together, in the auction business together. We all want to see each other succeed, but overwhelmingly in every single one of their purchase agreements, it's going to have a big statement, a big paragraph that says you are guaranteed clear title. And that if for any reason you're not getting clear title, the seller either A, has the right to extend the closing so they can clear up any liens or issues that might be out there, or you get your earnest money deposit back. You're not going to be required to close on the property unless you are guaranteed clear title the day of the sale. I typically get a title search done before the property. A lot of auctioneers will do that. Of course, you representing the buyer, they have to still get that updated right before the closing to make sure it's all, no liens have been placed on the property, just like you would in a transaction that you do. But it's in the purchase agreement that you're being guaranteed clear title, free and clear of any liens or encumbrances. If there were to be matters that give you less than marketable quality in the chain of command, like a mechanic's lien or something like that, that will be paid by the seller. It's all in the purchase agreement that you're signing, and that should be made available to you prior to the auction. Most auction companies are going to read over that, so you understand exactly what's expected of you as the buyer or the buyer's agent. So you're guaranteed clear title.
Excellent. And concerning appraisals, when someone's using financing to purchase the property, are they issued an appraisal waiver because the property has already gotten market value?
You would think so. And I would argue that all day long, but most banks, they're going to go just like you guys, just like a realtor would. Just a few months ago, we had a property in Lebanon appraised for $17,000 less than the auction value. I spoke to the appraiser. I said, look, we had 63 registered bidders. There were 5 backup bidders. All of that being said, that doesn't say that the rest of the neighborhood, that their homes are worth that amount. I wanted to argue so badly for the buyer. He had the money to come out of pocket. I think if we were willing to extend the closing and argue the appraisal, and that takes, 30 more days, he probably could have. But at the end of the day, I'm working for the seller, and the terms of the agreement are no contingencies, close in 45 days. We're not, because if you change one paragraph in the purchase agreement, or if you make one exception, it opens it up to change anything else. So we weren't able to give him the benefit of challenging the appraisal. But I would argue that too, hey, the auction, that is fair market value, but for whatever reason, appraisers, they're going to need to still find comps that suggest that's what the property's worth. But solid question.
Absolutely. Is there any chance a finance buyer would need to bring extra cash to close due to appraisal? I guess that, just like a traditional purchase, that could be trure, right?
Could be true. Yeah, it very well could be the case. And we're not there to mislead or deceive anybody. We're not there to ever. No, most auction companies are going to be the same way. If they're an NAA member, this is just our code of what we believe. We're not there to mislead, deceive, or talk anybody into giving any more than what they came prepared to do. But it's always okay if you change your mind and you decide to give a little more than what you came prepared to do. But the market sets the value, and that's just something you've got to have in mind. A lot of buyers are cash buyers. I can't go over a percentage of how many finance, how many are paying cash. Overwhelming majority of every file I have in my office right now are all getting financing, and it's all totally permissible. Just keep that in mind in your bidding strategy, that you got to have, a lot of times we'll get the VA loan question of, hey, is a VA loan, he doesn't have the $10,000 down. You got to have that earnest money deposit. There's no exceptions there. That is earnest money that's paid, and it is applied to the final bid, just like earnest money we get. But unlike a traditional sale where there's 15 different ways for the client to get their money back, at an auction, it's pretty much, you're not going to get that money back until you close on it, and it's applied to the purchase price.
Can you give us an idea? Obviously all different market conditions, but if a buyer falls out, they lose their deposit, are they also exposed to the risk of being sued for a specific performance?
100%. Yeah, you don't want to do that. So that's just where, we're qualifying people that come all the time, and we get calls all over the country. People come to auctions thinking they're going to get it for pennies on the dollar, and that's great. You need those people. We all have tire kickers at an open house and stuff like that, but Yeah, that does open them up to liability. I have had buyers default. We had a massive home in here in Rutherford County that we sold. The buyer put down $70,000 earnest money deposit. He said his tax returns were more complicated than Donald Trump's, and for whatever reason, we went from February to August trying to get this property closed. He ended up forfeiting his $70,000. We ended up selling the property for the exact same price, and the seller got to keep the earnest money deposit of $70,000. The seller honestly thought they hit a home run by making another 70 grand, but it was stressful. It was miserable. I don't want to do it again, but it has happened where a buyer loses their earnest money deposit, and 70,000 is absurd to lose, but it is a true story, and it absolutely happened.
Good to know. More questions. Buyer's premium, can it be wrapped into the loan amount?
Absolutely, of course. Yeah, that's going to be in the purchase price. That's going to be the recorded in the deed price. That's what the title insurance, everything is factored off that. That's not paid separate. That determines the total sales price. The buyer's premium is added to the final bid to determine the total sales price. So it 100% is a part of the loan. Correct.
We go to a closing just the same way we do otherwise, by pay transfer tax, stamps, all this good things, right?
Yeah. Buyer pays the transfer fee. I mean, it is almost identical to everything you do. In our marketing, a lot of the things we do, the beautiful pictures, the drone, everything, it's all just about the same, except we are not required to put a price on there. We don't set a price. And that's the beautiful thing when you let the free market compete. There are more unknown buyers than there are known buyers on any given property. And it's our job to go out there and spend the money to do that. So I think another question came in. You reading the chat.
I'm hitting them.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll ramble on there, but yeah, I mean, we're out there finding the buyers.
Yeah.
There are nuances of an auction, paying. Some auction companies are going to charge your seller an advertising fee. They're going to charge, $1,500, which is peanuts. I mean, that would be negligence. There's others that may charge $5,000 or a no sell fee if the property doesn't sell at auction. My stance is we're not going to move forward unless we are confident we're going to get the property sold. Our take, we cover all marketing and advertising costs. That's part of our job to do that. But there are certain circumstances where we may get a marketing deposit up front on some of our, super high-end properties that may be conducted with a reserve, but it's all negotiable. But overall, we will always pay the marketing and advertising expenses. But keep going there. We got some more questions.
What would be an average expense that I know you gave a lot of, there was a pretty big range there in cost.
It depends on it. The coolest thing we've done this year was selling the Best Western Hotel over near the airport, B&A. It brought 40% over appraised value. It was a part of a partnership dissolvement. It was a $22 million auction we did in the height of COVID when vaccines didn't even know if we're going to get a vaccine. And the hotel did ridiculous numbers. That marketing, we spent, I think, $30,000 marketing that. On another home, we might spend $5,000, $3,500. It all depends on the asset,
Sure.
What market we're in. If we're in Woodbury, Tennessee, or Southern Kentucky, or in Franklin, Tennessee, it just depends on the asset. It kind of varies a little bit.
10-4. How are buyers required to show they are qualified if they submit a loan?
Typically, we're going to pre-qualify them. We're going to make sure they understand all the terms and conditions, and then they're going to have to submit that when they come to the auction. Usually it's a deposit of $10,000, $20,000, and the auctions are tape recorded, they're videoed, and you're going to lose that earnest money deposit. And that typically, that big enough earnest money deposit is what sways anybody from just what ifing, seeing, they're going to be pretty confident they can close on the property if they're willing to put $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 down on a property. They're not going to default and walk away from that, very, very likely. So usually that larger deposit is what qualifies them.
But you don't get into the weeds as far as getting proof of funds from that. I mean, really,
right now I've got a poor little home in Portland, Tennessee, causing me more grief. It's like I said, it's totally fine to get a loan. They're getting an FHA loan, and we all know all the things that got to go involved to get that loan. And I wish they were paying cash, but they are borrowing some money. And no, now I'm in the weeds with them, but typically it's not that difficult. It's pretty simple, or people just pull out an equity line to pay for the difference, but it's permissible totally. It's just like if they're getting a VA loan, we're going to do everything we can to help the buyer. Our fiduciary duty is, of course, to the seller, but we got to help the buyer. It's just part of the process. drags the closing out longer, the full 30 or 45 days, but that's just part of it. Sometimes we can't always close them in 10 days like we would like to.
Excellent. If a buyer is using a loan by a finance protected, if a buyer is using a loan and isn't protected by a finance contingency, do you potentially lose some fabulous buyers who are not comfortable taking that risk?
I think it's a reasonable thought to have out there, that there's some people that don't want to do that because they are scared to death they can't get the property sold. That's where, as the auctioneer, you as the selling broker, the buyer's agent, we got to use our common sense. We got to look around. Look, this neighborhood is, every home in here is selling for whatever, we all believe it would, this is the appraised value it would bring. Now, if we only think it's a $600,000 home and you pay $730 for it and you have to get the financing, then you just can't buy this house. I mean, there's a lot of good buyers out there right now that cannot buy a home because they don't have the money or the down payment to get in there, or the credit score to get in there. So yeah, I think there are always circumstances that may prevent a buyer from being able to participate, but just part of life right now. But I think that is a reasonable thought.
You bet. Even though you guaranteed clear title, the buyer would still be paying for title insurance at closing, correct?
Most of the time, if they want it, if they're paying cash, it's not required, but yes.
Yep. 10-4. Is that your most expensive auction you've conducted? Is that 20 million, the big boy?
$22 million. And that was fun because we had two sides that hated each other, which typically lends itself to a good auction, but we were selling a hotel that was losing $3,000 every day. And it just only lost, I think, 300 grand last year. So, nothing to be concerned about, right? COVID going on, but it's the Best Western on Murfreesboro Pike. And then we sold 3 lots behind Deja Vu in Nashville. If you know where Deja Vu or Hustler Hollywood Video, you guys, everybody's seen that store. It's the parking lot right behind it, but we essentially sold the parking lot for Deja Vu. And those two brought $10.2 million. So it was really exciting to be a part of that auction and be right here in Nashville, where, Skyline building is going to be built. But yeah, that's the biggest and the one that we will always talk about, I think.
Congratulations. That's awesome and exciting. Any other questions before we close? Jay, you've done a spectacular job, as I knew you would, and we appreciate you so. Any other questions out there, anyone? I had one or two and they fleeted me and I wasn't going to type them in there. So I'm sure if they'll hit me.
That's good. Yeah, the main thing is just absolute reserve auctions, kind of know what's going on there. Always be mindful that there's a buyer's premium. That's a fee added to the final bid. And then the broker participation. Are they paying commission on for you to bring a buyer to it? So those are 4 or 5 things that will make you far more knowledgeable about real estate and auctions, and just know that you can be compensated very, very, very well. So I'm so proud to talk to you all. If you have any questions, you can go to our website, James R. Cash Auctions. I'm Jay Cash, the auctioneer. You can text me at any time and I'll answer any questions. If you see an auction advertised and you've got questions about it, happy to explain anything there is about the auction process. Buyer's premium can be financed. Yes, it can be financed.
It can. Yes, it can be financed.
Yeah.
Jay, appreciate you again just so much. And y'all have a friend in the auction business now. So as they say, so I really appreciate, sounds like it's a great partnership together. And I'm really just thankful for you. So appreciate you.
Talk to y'all soon. Thank you very much.
Jay, thanks much. Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye.